I'm Ollie Matthews. This is Societal Narcissism, and this video is sponsored by contribution from David. And David sent in a very nice general contribution, which I'm going to use to review this other Vice panel on. It's on Asian hate, Asian American hate, but it really is just another feminism panel, this time with males, mostly simps. This guy here, Vince, I think his name is a conservative. She here, this purple hair, is just the worst. Off to the front, in the front corner, is another conservative, and behind him is more of a conservative female. Everyone else here is uber liberal. This one here is Simp City. He's the worst. These two right here are the absolute worst. So let's just get right into it. It's a 43-minute video, so it's probably going to be at least another hour and a half or here. So here we go.
Bent the knee to George Floyd and to Black Lives Matter. They quite literally did that.
And that was a bad thing?
I think it was a stupid thing.
Started, and we'll do it. You see the look of shock on his, like, this guy is such a beta simp. He's such a beta. Like, and he's thinking like, and I just want to tell him, these chicks aren't gonna bang you, bro. They're not.
Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, the entire Democrat basically caucus in Congress literally bent the knee to George Floyd and to Black Lives Matter. They quite literally did that.
And that was a bad thing?
I think it was a stupid thing.
They can't handle it. They can't handle hearing truth. They can't. They melt down because all they have is their liberal narrative. That's it. They can't actually debate points.
Are they filming us for like B-roll?
Stand by. All right, here we go. You guys feeling ready?
It's happening.
Hi, and welcome to our conversation about what it means to be Asian American. I'm Krishna. My parents came here from India. I was born here. So I identify as South Asian American or Asian American. And I just wanted to call out that, we're talking about the largest continent on the planet with multiple countries, ethnicities, sub-ethnicities within it. So we did our best to try to get a diverse mix of opinions and backgrounds on this panel, but you can't get everyone's opinion. So as we start, I want to get a quick poll. How many of you guys think the term Asian American is useful? So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We got a couple 50-50s. What about if we were to add Asian American Pacific Islander? I guess I'm curious to hear why, and maybe the way we can do that is going around the room and talking about who we are, where we came from, and what that term means to us, and what you think it might mean to the rest of the world. So.
I'm Yuling, and I would identify myself as an Asian American. I feel really strongly about being an immigrant. I'm first gen, or I say first and a half gen, because I was born in China, and then we immigrated to New York and then to San Francisco.
So you wouldn't be first and a half gen, you'd be half gen, because you were born in another country, which is fine. As long as you want to assimilate to American culture, American values, there's no problem with any of that.
And I think that the term Asian American is complicated because it applies to so many different identities, ethnicities, and cultures. It's a helpful term when, you don't really know what else to you just lump everybody into one term. And I don't think there's any issue with it being Asian American and Pacific Islander either, because that's just more inclusive in my opinion.
So there's a sense of community amongst people from different cultures.
Yeah, I think it's difficult because you can't really put it into words. It's applicable to such a wide range of things, and we're not a monolith.
It's complex.
Yes.
Yovan?
I was born in Manila, Philippines.
Interesting. And what does that heritage mean to you?
I'm a little conflicted because sometimes I just want to be American. I don't want to specify the fact that I'm Asian, but at the same time, it's like someone looks at you, they're going to say that you're Asian, so you say you're Asian American.
So what exactly? There's nobody who's looking at at most of these people and thinking that they're not Asian. I mean, Americans are supposed to be, it's supposed to be a melting pot. That was the whole point of it. So to put these qualifiers on being an American, it doesn't make any sense. It's divisive. All of it is divisive.
American. I don't like the idea of separating the Pacific Islander just because for so long I was told I wasn't Asian, that I was a Pacific Islander. I just think it's
By who though? Is white people? Were white people telling you, no, you're not Asian? Most white people have a hard time telling the difference. No, that's other Asians telling him that. So keep that in mind, because you're going to see where this whole debate goes.
all encompassing we are Asian.
Micah.
I feel very prideful about the Asian Pacific Islander. I live in San Diego now, but I'm originally from Honolulu, Hawaii, and my dad's born and raised from Kona. I am so close with my family. Just growing up, it's hard to explain, but being from Hawaii, like the aloha spirit is real. Being around your family, having that common courtesy for community is just something that I'm really proud of.
And you feel like, as it relates to Asian American and Pacific Islander, these are two things that kind of go together in some ways?
Yeah, they do. They do.
How?
So the thing about Hawaii is that it's a really huge collection of different types of ethnicities, and there's a lot of Asian influence in Hawaii as well. A lot of different people who are there are from Korea, China, Japan, and so I just consider them family as well.
Well, good to meet you. Tell me about yourself, Vince.
Genetically, I'm a quarter Italian, 75% Vietnamese, but I am really with Teddy Roosevelt on this one. I don't believe in the hyphenated American thing. I identify as American. I consider myself an American, sure.
What he's talking about is Teddy Roosevelt when he was president. It's a famous article. Anybody claiming to be an American with another nationality isn't American at all. These are his words. Isn't American at all. America has room for only one nationality and one flag. Anyone claiming otherwise isn't American. That's what he's talking about. Because you have to assimilate to the American ideals and the American standards for this to work. Otherwise, you're getting what you have here. I'm Asian American, or on the last one, as a female, as a disabled female, as a black female. Like, we're all supposed to be Americans. Everybody can see everybody who has sight can see the physical differences of everybody.
Genetically, I'm mostly Asian. I don't go around thinking I'm an Asian American, because I think that, especially considering the fact that America today is increasingly a more and more diverse country, which is what it is, the only way that's going to hold together is if people can, to some extent, all identify as being part of the same nation, part of the same creed to an extent. I mean, that's just the way I would view it.
Vish, you're up.
I'm 100% Hindu.
He's a conservative, and the woman in black behind him is also conservative.
Indian American. I was born in Brooklyn. My parents are from India. I personally just describe myself as American. I find, like Vince said, the hyphenated American thing, I think it's by definition divisive when you're dividing the identity. I prefer to call myself American. I don't call myself Indian American, Asian American, though when people ask, like, oh, well, what are you? I'll say, well, I'm of Indian heritage, but I was born in Brooklyn.
Yes, sir.
I proudly identify as Asian American. I also, like my experience, my mom is from Japan. She immigrated to America. So I do truly feel that I am a part of the Asian American experience where, at home, it's a Japanese household. It's a Japanese culture, because I was predominantly also raised by my mom too. And then also
single mother. So what you got here, single mother, obviously probably a black father. And so you can understand, and not because she has a black father, but the single mother, you could see why she thinks and says the things she does.
we happen to live in America. And I think there is a very unique perspective in that. As well as I'm a proud Asian American, I'm a proud Black American too. I'm a proud biracial American. And I think there is definitely also a
more, so you're also Japanese, you're Black, you're biracial. Like, she's checking all the boxes, and every box is just another way to cause divisiveness. That's it.
need for us to be able to say Asian American, especially because we are often seen as not American or not American enough. But then you go back to Asia and they're like, oh, you're so American. So it's just like, well, who am I?
Being between cultures in a way, or straddling cultures, being part of two cultures.
Yeah, being part of two cultures.
And that's the thing that none of these the liberals realize. Okay, they're here and they're going to be complaining about Americans, complaining mostly about white people. Yet when they go back to their countries of origin, they hear, you're American, you're not part of our... They don't get it. They sit here, they're going to sit here bashing American culture, bashing white people, but yet, look how they're all dressed. You'll see.
Cultures. I'm Asian, I'm American, I'm Asian American.
Well, nice to meet you. Joyce.
So I'm a Taiwanese Asian American. I identify as Asian American, but at the same time, I think the term Asian American and Asian Pacific Islander, they have to be separated, because when we go to colleges and apply to get in, we're on different socioeconomic pathways. So actually the term Asian Pacific Islander would actually get you in more than someone does East Asian, because I believe now they separate the two.
The reason they separate the two, okay, is because Asian Pacific Islanders are, and this is just research, I'm not saying it, I'm not saying it's true or not, but this is what the reason why Asian Pacific Islanders are ranked lower than like I guess standard Asians or East Asians is because Asian Pacific Islanders are considered the lowest IQ of any racial class. That's why. That is exactly why. Because it's all a status quota system. You're on a ladder. You know, Asian, like East Asians are up here, white people, I mean, I don't know, like Hispanics here, like, and then you get down to East Pacific Asians are at the bottom. That's why that is.
Well, there's a lot to unpack there, and I think that's what we'll try to do today. But it's good to meet you. I guess this is a funny question, but like, do you think the average American, when meeting you, would be like, oh yeah, you're Taiwanese?
No, they think I'm Chinese. I'm Japanese or Korean, but basically I'm Asian. They always ask where am I from because of the way I look.
And they ask like, where are you really from?
Yes, yes. And I'm like, always, I'm American.
I get that a lot too. Ellen.
Hi, my name is Ellen. I'm Korean American. I came from Korea when I was 8 years old, got on a plane by myself, not speaking a word of English. Didn't know white people were real.
Oh, there's the cackle. There's Simp Boy. Look at, like, these people are sad. They're sad. Didn't know white people were real. Okay? We're going to be on her a lot. She's our wheelchair lady for this video.
For me, it was huge culture shock. My parents had already immigrated, so I was joining them.
Your parents had already left. You were 8 years old. Your parents left you in Korea and then had you fly over by yourself. Didn't know white people were real, all that. She seems to have picked up the culture pretty well, though, with her purple hair and her ripped jeans and her face full of makeup and her fake eyelashes. Okay? I don't think that's a big Korean culture thing. Maybe it is now in South Korea with K-pop and all that, because they're kind of been Americanized over there as well too. But that's American culture right here. All of them are shining stereotypical examples of American culture and white people culture as they denigrate it.
Like to be identifying myself as a Korean American woman, and I recognize the importance of Asian American Pacific Islander. Definitions are always constantly changing as we as society constantly evolving. I don't like to just consider myself American, because when anybody in this country looks at me, they don't just see American, they always see Asian first. Instead of using that as a thing that holds me back, I say it proudly, and it's taken time to accept my identity, to really know that.
She seems like she's really accepting her identity with her purple hair and her ripped jeans. And this is about her, not about other people. She's not accepting herself as an American.
That's sort of an umbrella term to open the door into the conversation. I know it's not possible to encompass all of us because Asia's so big, right? But in order for us to be seen and heard, we have to start somewhere. So I think it's a good term for that.
Ziad.
I'm Ziad. I use he, him pronouns, and I am Bangladeshi American, and I'm Asian American. The reason why I, is lukewarm about the term Asian American insofar as its usefulness is that I don't actually often refer to myself as Asian American, despite fully believing that I am, because to Yuling's point, oftentimes I think people have a perception of what Asian American looks like, right? And sometimes that leaves out South Asians. Sometimes that leaves out Central Asians. Sometimes that leaves out huge parts of the world. Me personally, I lean into my hyphenated identities, right? I am American, and I am Muslim, and I am Bangladeshi, and I am Asian, right? And I am all of these things at once, and I'm not one more than the other.
He doesn't want to be labeled. I'll tell you exactly what he is. He doesn't want to be labeled as Arab. That's what it is, because he wants to be labeled as Asian. It's part of Asia. He is Asian, but he doesn't necessarily look like a typical type of Asian. It's not obvious Asian. You could think he could be from many different places. This guy.
I take pride in all of these things, and I think that for me, I find power in that insofar as when I look at this country, I think it is so damaging, right? So saddening that sometimes this country makes us choose.
I mean, what you point out is that
nobody's making them choose. These debates about whether you're South Asian, North Asian, Central Asian, you're not Asian, it's not white people saying, well, you're not really Asian. No, that's other Asians doing it to each other. I've never, ever encountered white people arguing with somebody about what their nationality actually is. Especially Asians, because it is for white people, it is so difficult to tell the difference, to know the difference on sight. So you gotta ask. And they don't ask us. I mean, we're just white. You're just white. If you're non-white, you're just white. It doesn't matter if you're Italian, it doesn't matter if you're Irish, doesn't matter if you're English, if you're Dutch, it doesn't matter. You're just white to them. That's how they want to treat us, but then they said we just want to treat them that way. No.
we kind of all have a dual consciousness or are dual citizens of this country and the world, which is to say we go home, we might have a different culture, a different food, a different language that we speak. We go to school and we have friends who might not share or understand what that language culture is. And we have a desire to both be true to the heritage, but then also be accepted, successful, and otherwise in the non-Asian American world that we live in. Assimilation. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Is it a burden? Is it an opportunity?
Assimilation, I think I would define that as, in part, I think necessary to an extent because we are forced to in order to navigate this country. So I would say...
Oh, so you're forced. So she's saying she's forced to wear a shirt that you can see her tits through. She's forced to dress like this. That's what she's saying? That's what she's saying with a face full of makeup or American hairstyle cut. Like, all that's forced upon her.
Say, learning the language, learning how to, properly...
If I go to China, am I going to get away with speaking English, or do I have to learn the language? What kinds of country, non-English speaking country, can you go to and demand English gets spoken? The entitlement. And it just shows you that these people aren't assimilated. They don't want to assimilate. They don't want to be Americans. They want to bring whatever portion of their country they have here and make you abide by their rules.
Behave, for example, that's in part kind of assimilation, making sure that you are
in line.
Kosher in the...
In line, this one. In line with her purple hair and her face full of makeup and her fake lashes and ripped jeans. In line. Who's keeping you in line? Assimilation isn't a bad thing, but they want to make you think it is.
This society. And I think in part that means survival.
I think assimilation is not just a great thing, it's a necessary thing.
Thank you.
No society can hold together where people have nothing in common, they don't speak the same language, they don't practice the same things. And you may look at something like just food habits or what you eat and think that's fairly frivolous. But the truth of the matter is that on a broader level, when we're talking about more big picture things, differences in race, culture, religion, all these things, people have fought wars, violent wars, killed each other over these things for thousands of years. If America is to hold together, assimilation, not just good or bad, necessary. I don't think it's going to be possible for America to survive as a stable, functioning society if people don't, to some degree, say, well, here's what we're going to commonly agree upon.
But who gets to choose it?
The majority culture, I suppose.
Yeah.
And what's
The people-
majority culture?
The people with power.
And who's people with power?
People with power.
White people.
Well,
White people. Sorry, we founded the country. We settled the country. I'm sorry. You came here. You came here. Like, as she sits there, white people, with her fucking purple hair and her ripped jeans and looking like a typical American girl, just happens to be Korean. She has a problem with white people. She has a problem. Sorry, we settled this land. Sorry, we settled this. Sorry, not sorry. But yeah, we're the majority people. If I went to Korea and said, they said, I got to assimilate. And I said, assimilate to what? To the culture. Well, who runs the culture? Koreans in Korea. Oh. But I say it as I'm wearing a typical, traditional Korean garb, Korean clothing. I dye my hair jet black, okay? And Koreans, stop.
I don't know if that's.
I'm gonna say it. White people. It's okay.
I don't know if that's necessarily so true. I mean,
Wait, can you
look
unpack?
Yeah.
Let's elaborate.
I don't think a particularly white, quote unquote, interest controls things like
In America.
pop culture.
Do you believe
Well, I
white
think-
supremacy exists?
I think there are people who believe in it. I think there's people who all believe that their race is superior.
So you don't believe in white supremacy?
Do you believe America is a white supremacist state?
No, not at all.
And not founded
No
on-
white supremacist state would even allow us to be doing this. I don't understand.
Exactly. There's such a white supremacist state. We're letting a bunch of Asians get together on Vice and shit talk America and white people. Okay? Because that's what happens in a white supremacist state. It's ridiculous. It's not hate, actually. It's jealousy in a lot. It's jealousy. I don't know why, but it is.
So white supremacists, there's just KKK people walking. Actually, I go around New York City. I notice that, I guess Brooklyn a little bit different. Most of the people here are not white, and they're doing their thing. So I don't understand.
What does doing their thing mean to you?
Going to work.
Are they making the same amount of money? Are they getting the same access to opportunities?
I think they're getting great access to opportunity.
Please unpack it. Are they equivalent? Are our communities?
He thinks he's so deep, and he's making. These are just vague talking points that he thinks that this guy can't refute.
And communities that are leading culture, to your point, because you pointed to popular culture as something where, in your view, white people don't have the power, when the reality is it is the white executives who are profiting off of and exploiting predominantly black and brown bodies for their financial gain to then parade to us and tell us that we're thriving, when the reality is it is women of color, and it is black folks, and it is Asian American folks, it is Hispanic folks, and it is people from marginalized communities who are disproportionately being impacted by every adverse thing that society is facing.
These chicks aren't gonna bang you, bro. They're not.
While the few at the top who don't represent our communities are profiting, there are massive disparities based on race, based on class, based on gender, based on all of these things that shouldn't exist.
Well, nobody denies that there's disparities or that.
Well, let's have Vince.
What is that an Asian? Is that a Korean thing? That seems like a white girl thing. That seems like a white girl thing you're doing.
Respond.
Or that, I think the question is, do they exist because of supposed white supremacy? And when I look at the fact that, virtually every corporation and institution bends the knee to diversity, celebrates every single Heritage Month, has all these programs, every single one toe the line for Black Lives Matter. I don't look at that.
What is toe the line?
I don't look at that and say conservative white people are in power in this country. As a matter of fact, I'd argue to a large extent, you can talk about, you know, what race or whatever people are, but is like a supposedly conservative white interest in power in America. I would honestly say I think it's the opposite of that.
I want to clarify one thing. You can be liberal and still a white supremacist, right?
Yes.
Like, I would be very clear,
Absolutely.
right? That it doesn't necessarily mean conservative white power is the predominant folks in power. I think it could span a lot of political ideologies and still have these things embedded in how you govern and how you lead and how you make decisions. However, when you talk about bending the knee, that is a wild way, I think, to look at society finally trying in some ways to right the wrongs of its
It's not so
ills.
wild. I mean, even like your supposedly white politicians, you look at what they did in 2020, they quite literally bent the knee. Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, the entire Democrat basically caucus in Congress literally bent the knee to George Floyd and to Black Lives Matter. Like, they quite literally did that.
And that was a bad thing?
I think it was a stupid thing. I
Why?
think it was just ridiculous pandering
So
to
Black
a
lives do not
terrorist
matter?
movement ran by.
Yeah, please, yeah.
Black lives do not matter?
They can't handle hearing the truth. They can't. And what they don't realize is that these white executives that are in charge, they're not conservatives. They're liberals just like them. And all they're doing by bending the knee and is causing more strife and more infighting in their community. And they don't see it because what they see is the opportunity to bash white people. And they don't see that they're being puppeteered by the same white people they profess to hate.
I do think that Black Lives Matter. I don't support the movement known as Black Lives Matter.
Do you ever say all lives matter?
Of course. As a Christian, I absolutely believe.
There it is. So white people, so other people's lives just don't matter. Like, it's not an equality movement. It's a supremacist movement. They're all looking for their little slab of victimization so their supremacist movement can move on.
All lives matter.
Absolutely.
Well, let me put this back into some more concrete terms. So I guess to try to understand the conflict here that you guys are having, what role do you think Asian Americans have as far as the larger injustices and racism that this country has exhibited and has pushed it forward in the 200 years prior to even our arrival? But I guess the easiest way to make it something to talk about is the concept of the model minority myth. When you hear that word, what does it mean to you?
So the model minority myth, after World War II, they used us to separate other people of color. They used our race to say that we were the best race, that we were the model minority because we were the smartest, we got the best jobs, we did these things, and we were able to assimilate to what their idea of what they wanted. They wanted an example to use of people of color that they could then use against all the other people of color. And
no, we want examples of something for you to strive for so you can assimilate and be successful in this country. But look, every Asian isn't in the top tier. It's like every white person isn't in the top tier. There's plenty of dumb white people. There's plenty of dumb Asians. They found a bunch of them here. So what it really is they don't want to be shown other Asians who have been able to obtain what they can't. And somehow they want to turn that into, now that's racism. No, we're trying to show you, give you examples of people who look like you, who can make it work and succeed here. Nope, that's not what you're doing. You're just being racist.
And what they also did is they caused infighting between our communities so that we wouldn't look at the actual problem, which was white supremacy. When I think of the model minority myth, I grew up wanting to be white. I fucking hate that about myself.
There it is. There's the truth. I grew up wanting to be white. And I think that's the problem for a lot of them. They wanted to be white.
It is so embarrassing.
Okay, so statistically, it is true that Asians, right, on average, make more money, in terms of medium, make more money, better test scores, get into better colleges, all that stuff. I think the question is, why is that? And I don't know, model minority, whatever that label wants to mean.
That's actually a myth because we cannot be...
Well, no, listen. Well, let me finish my point. We need to observe what makes people successful and unsuccessful. And I think when you look at trends that are generally true in the Asian community, not of everyone, but are generally true, usually you have families that are sticking together. You have, people...
They don't want to hear it. They can't hear, like, oh, no. Yeah, they don't want it. They just want to be subsidized for their bad decisions. That's it.
Are taught to work hard in school, not get into trouble. I think that translates to why Asians en masse are successful. And I don't think you have to be Asian or white for that matter to not have kids out of wedlock, not, commit crime, not.
Oh my God, don't have kids out of wedlock. Like they would be ostracized if they had to go back to their home countries with this attitude. They would be ostracized. They would be told, you're too Americanized. Go back to New York or wherever you came from. That's the problem. And wouldn't be getting away in Bangladesh single mothers. Get the hell out of here. In Korea, kids out of wedlock. Get out of here.
Cause trouble or whatever it is. It's just a matter of
what is happening? He's talking truth and nobody's stopping him.
Well, common sense, that's what makes people successful. And if that's so-called assimilation, having a nuclear family, buying a house, going to school, whatever it is, then yeah, okay, call me a pro-assimilation then.
I think there's a difference between assimilation and erasure.
Yes.
The way that you're kind of going about it seems...
Erasure, like erasing your culture, like coloring your hair purple. Yes, erasure with my purple hair. I don't want to be my Korean heritage erased.
It's of course, we want to be in community with people. And I don't think there's a problem with being in community with people from different backgrounds. That's not the issue. It's also embracing the diversity that we inherently have and accepting that and being okay with that and celebrating that.
That's very idealistic, I think, but...
Why does everything have to be celebrating? How many parties do you need? You need an Asian party every day? Like these people, they just want special recognition. They want to be the lunch captain in kindergarten. This is the mentality. You're dealing with children. You're dealing with adult children.
I think we should acknowledge the fact that diversity, quote unquote, is not a factor that is our strength. It's not a factor that historically or even in the current strengthens societies. People don't come together, form societies, form families, form communities because they have nothing in common. They come together and do those things because they have something in common, right?
You talk about race in such black and white terms. The way you talk about it is it's either with America, whatever your definition of America, or not. You're talking in very black and white terms, and that's actually...
It's a black and white issue, okay? She don't like it. She don't like the logic. So she's going to try to muddy it up with some word salad here that means nothing. That's just all emotion.
The problem in discussing race, because we're Asian Americans, we're neither black, we're neither white. When you're having a race discussion, you can't be talking about in such lines. Yeah. Everything is in the gray.
The more in common that a society has with one another, the more likely they are to work together and build things in society and not constantly be fighting each other and at odds with each other.
Did you think the Japanese internment was a good thing? Because that was a real assimilation situation. You know.
The Japanese internment had nothing to do with assimilation. It was a response to nearly having our entire Pacific fleet wiped out and losing over 3,000 sailors, having a naval base destroyed, having warships sunk. The USS Arizona still sits at the bottom of the Pacific. There's a memorial around it. There's still bodies. It is a grave site. It was a grave site. I wasn't there for it. The reason is because everybody was afraid because there was information being given to the Japanese by Japanese Americans. Now, I'm not justifying it, but to say it was some kind of assimilation ploy is absolutely wrong. We lost nearly our entire Pacific fleet was nearly wiped out. Oh.
But I recognize that the term assimilation has negative history and facts associated with that word. So we do have to be careful in how we choose, because assimilation for people of color have not been good to us historically. That's factual. So let me ask you.
We're discussing the model minority myth and the fact that
Japanese internment is a classic example of assimilating Asian Americans.
No, it's a classic example of freaking out over getting attacked, over a military attack. They nearly lost our entire Pacific fleet. Our aircraft carriers just happened to be out on maneuvers that day. That's why we didn't lose them. Otherwise, we'd have been in real trouble.
No, it's not. It's a classic example of internment. I mean, they intern people.
Why? Why did they intern them? Because they saw them as other. Because they saw them as dangerous.
Not really. Well, yes, they saw them as dangerous because, and I don't agree with it, but left-wing president FDR at the time saw it as a national security risk.
So you're a Republican, right? You're right-wing, right?
I want to make.
Oh, you're a Republican, right? Well, yeah, sweetie. So that means you're a Democrat. And he's telling you a Democrat liberal is the one who interned everybody. And it wasn't because he just let's just assimilate them. No, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, nearly sunk our entire Pacific fleet. Europe's on fire. Hitler's fucking going all over the place. Now's the time to assimilate Asians. They're stupid. They're just stupid and they're ignorant. Oh, you're a Republican. Because he just told you a Democrat liberal is the one responsible for all this. But no, when they're talking about white men, they are talking about conservative Republicans. And they have no real idea of the history behind anything. It just makes them feel good.
Make sure that we move this way to keep talking about it. And thank you for all the passion on this. And I think there's a lot to unpack. Joyce, tell me about your feelings about the model minority myth. What does it make you think about?
For me, I don't think race should be an issue in anything. When we want to make a decision, we should not put race as a factor. Living in New York City, we're the melting pot of the world, so I haven't actually experienced any of these biases. And if we keep continuing to live on, remembering how history was, we're never going to move further. So I identify myself as American, and in this country, it's the only country where a homeless person can be a millionaire the next day. So based on capitalism, we all have an opportunity, and we should not use race as a factor in either getting ahead or...
Oh, he's not happy. He's not. Another one off. How dare she? How dare she? I live in New York. I don't have these problems. And capitalism could become a millionaire the next day.
Or depriving ourselves of opportunities.
I have a question directly related to the fact that you live in New York, right?
Yeah.
And you're an Asian woman. There have been significant high crimes towards Asian women.
By who? By white people? By white people are doing that?
That were all over the news. Did that affect you? And what were your thoughts on that?
The government is telling us that it's Asian hate, but that's not the real issue. The real issue is actually that these people were mentally ill and they were let out.
Or both can be the issue, right?
Yeah, it can.
Right, but it's not white people. It is Asian hate, but it ain't the white people that are beating up Asians and attacking Asians. Unfortunately, we know who it is. We know who's doing it. It's not white people. It's never a white person.
Simultaneously exist as issues.
You can't say that it's Asian hate and use that as propaganda.
Propaganda?
I feel like also to just say that these people are mentally ill is...
Oh, these two. He thinks he's in. He thinks he's nailing this. He ain't. He's such a beta. This is the type of guy that will date rape you. Him. Because he thinks you owe him.
Of kind of an ableist argument too, because there's plenty of people who are mentally ill who are not going out and killing Asian people on the street.
All these attacks that you're seeing the video.
So every mentally ill person, if they're not attacking Asians, that makes the point completely moot. That when a lot of these Asians are attacked, it's usually by somebody with a mental illness. So unless everybody who's mentally ill is attacking Asians, the point is invalid. I told you, these are not smart people.
Videos of in San Francisco, New York City. Newsflash, they're not being prosecuted as hate crimes. So the more correct way to look at it is what is the primary perpetrator of violence against Asians overall, right? Because if we talk about these videos, we have to count them in the statistics, and we're not doing that. And when we do that, we find, well, I'll tell you this, the plurality top perpetrator of violence against Asians, number one, is not happening in rural America, and number two, is not being done by white people.
So is it black people that are doing it? Is it the black and brown people?
This is what they all didn't want to have to accept, but sorry. Sorry, and I know because you're half black that you're sensitive to that, but yeah, like, it isn't white people doing this.
No, that's exactly
just inherently violent. Like, just say it.
I didn't say that. All I said
beat
was,
around it. Just
all I
say it.
said-
If it's not white
all
people
I
or
said-
Asian people,
all
who
I,
is it?
all I said, I didn't say anything about inherently violent. All I said is that if
Well,
it's
now you did.
If it's
no one accused you of that, and now
if
you did.
it's a white,
so like your
No,
bias
no.
is.
Oh, now you did. Now you said it. Now that's what you really think. No. What I'm saying is when these things happen, it's usually somebody who's black. And they don't want to accept it. They want you to believe. And even though they know it's not true, they know it's not white people doing it, but yet they still want to blame white people for it. As every one of them is dressed like a typical American.
It's slipping out
It's
there.
clear you want to
here?
say it. You should
Can
just
anyone let
say
me
it.
talk here?
When it comes to Asian hate, the perpetrator is not a white supremacist anymore.
Correct. That's all I'm saying.
So that's the
all
problem.
that I'm saying.
Like, we don't want to blame one race for violence when that's actually not true.
Is it white people? Is it white people?
It is white people.
Are these attacks
It
happening?
is white
Is
people.
it?
I literally looked up statistics.
You do not have to.
No, you didn't. No, you. First of all, you don't. You don't have the capacity to research anything. Okay, she's sitting there trying to say it's white people that we see on the news every time an Asian's getting attacked and beaten up. That it's always white people. Like, what's the point of even carrying on a debate with somebody like this? Because they're living in delusion land. As she sits there with purple hair, ripped jeans, face full of makeup, looking like a typical white girl. And then wanting to blame white people for violence against Asians. Oh.
To be white to perpetuate white supremacy. No one's saying it's not hard to govern a heterogeneous society, but it is possible to do a lot better than the way that we're fucking doing it right now. It's like we've banked on this myth of white adjacency more than this model minority myth of, like, instead of aligning ourselves with the black community who've been fighting for racial justice and liberation, right? And
yeah, they've been fighting, and then they're the ones who've been fighting Asians.
Acknowledging our own privilege and putting our bodies on the line to fight for these movements. Instead, we banked on white adjacency, and here we are still being pushed.
Yes.
First of all, what exactly is white adjacency? Is it working hard, having families?
I don't
understand what the
What
issue
is it?
But then number two, wait, let me finish my point. I think it is gaslighting when, again, the majority of violent attacks against Asians are not being perpetrated by white people to blame white supremacy.
White supremacy as a construct is this idea like that the norm of American is whiteness.
Yes.
That whiteness is the default.
Standard.
That whiteness is the standard that we all ought to aspire to. And we deviate.
Who said that? It's American culture. It was just founded by white people. And black people, too. Oh my, they just don't want to be responsible for their own lives. They don't. So they have glommed on to this bullshit issue that if they tried this in their home countries where their nationalities are from, they'd be thrown out. Nobody'd listen to this.
Just talking about KKK.
Yeah.
It's not talking about lynchings. It's about a mentality that we have absorbed.
I'm gonna interrupt for a second. Yuling, what's going through your head right now?
Model minority myth, if I'm not wrong, I actually think that Asian Americans did create that first and foremost to push the notion that we are dangerous away. First to say that, like, no, we belong here because I promise you we will not cause harm to you. And that has trickled down now into becoming almost a curse. Historically was used first to be like, we're not dangerous, we're American, we are American. But later on it has moved into this sort of weaponized term / almost like idea concept where we get to say, like, oh, because we are model minority, like, we're not, like, dangerous and we're not this. And I think about this a lot with class, like, a lot of Asian women who are sex workers. Who are we actually taking into account when we think about model minority? And I think that that term really applies to a very specific amount, or that idea of what that looks like is very specific. Because when I think of the Asian Americans that I know, I don't think that they're worried about whether or not they look like model minority. I think they're just trying to survive.
Vish, I see you percolating over there. What's going through your brain?
I don't understand why everybody's so hurt about like being described as a model minority. For me, it's like, well, I want to be the best. I want to be the smartest. I want to be the toughest. The model minority thing, I've never thought about it because I'm too focused on trying to be a model American.
Right, because what he doesn't understand is these are lesser. These are people who are lower on the chain than he is. He's smarter. He's more motivated. He's more driven. They're not. So they want to chalk that up to white supremacy. Like, no. Try to get away with that shit in your own country. Try to get away with that shit in Korea. Model minority. Stop it. Try being a white person in Korea talking about how dare you try to make me act more Korean or assimilate to your country as I'm living here.
When I say the word stop Asian hate, what does it mean to you?
Scam.
I agree.
Why?
I see it as the same way as the BLM organization. It's just a cudgel meant to divide Americans on racialized language and racialized ideas that are not really congruent with reality. The Stop Asian Hate movement, makes a big fuss about white supremacy. So I find that to be a scam in a similar way that BLM makes a boogeyman out of cops and white people and white supremacy and all that. It's all the same language and all the same sort of ideas that are being used to divide Americans and basically put Asians in fear of something that I personally do not think exists.
Who agrees with Vish?
No, I don't.
Raise your hands up high. Let's hear it. Why?
I mean, I agree with everything he says because they're basically weaponizing it and making us victims, but we're not victims. We have friends that are of different races. If you start to use the word hate, hate will continue. Hate is a very strong word.
So even when it's stop Asian hate, you're still like, wait, it has Asian hate in here and we should not even consider it as a serious thing?
It's divisive.
Well, it's referring to murders, people getting attacked in broad daylight, elders getting bashed in the head.
By white people? White people are bashing Asian elders in the head. Stop it. Like, how do you even, what is the point of even debating somebody like this? There's none.
I fear for my mother-in-law going on walks. I ask her to make sure she's not walking around when it's getting dark. So it's very real. Getting murdered.
Because that's when the white people come out and start attacking people, when the sun goes down. We go out and start fucking shit up. And then this is why. This is her point. The other conservatives' point. Like, the hate, like, this is why we're divided, because you're making people defend themselves for shit that, it's like, it's obvious it's not happening.
Murdered for being Asian is as hateful as it gets, is it not? Why are we afraid to just say out loud, let's stop Asian hate? It is happening in astronomical numbers. Studies have shown the increase. And where did it come from? Right after the COVID blast of people saying, oh, it's the Chinese virus. There was a direct correlation to that Asian hate. It just didn't come out of thin air. So it really minimized.
Oh, so it was, I guess maybe white people saying, or probably Trump saying, China virus that caused black people to lose their minds and then go out and start attacking Asians as a vessel of white supremacy. Is that the point she's making here?
Our experiences when you say it doesn't exist.
Here's a radical idea. Okay, you guys ready?
No, I'm not.
So there's a lot of violence happening. A lot of it's against Asian people. A lot of it is happening in cities. Crazy idea, I know. Then maybe it's not a good idea to let criminals out of jail. Maybe it's not a good idea to defund the police, neuter the police ability to have any degree of law and order in our streets. And maybe you wouldn't have so much violence happening against so many different types of vulnerable people. I mean, this is just the truth of the situation. You know, we can talk about this correlation with COVID. Maybe that's true to an extent. It's also true
wait, so
that
maybe that's true to an extent. What do you mean?
Because it's also true that it's been climbing over the past year or two, whatever. That's also around the same time that we had all of these, anti-police movements. A lot of
But
it
it's also around the same
policy.
time that Donald Trump was calling it the China virus, right?
Well, he's not calling it anymore, and it looks like this stuff is still happening. The problem with saying stop Asian hate and us just saying stigma, whatever, is that it misses the real core of the problem. The real core of the problem is that there is lawlessness and mass violence and mass crime happening in cities. I think that stop Asian...
Right. They don't want to accept what they have done is causing their own violence. Because they're against police, they're about for defunding the cops, they're for all these riots. They were all down for that. So they don't want to accept that they neutered the police. They scared people, and now they're getting attacked. But it's white supremacy. No, it's your actions that caused all this.
Hate movement comes from woke left-wing social movement to kind of make it into this argument of like minorities being persecuted, when I don't think that's the core of the problem. I think the core of the problem is like, it's just dangerous in our cities.
Originally, when you asked what stop Asian hate means to you, the first word that popped in my mind was ignorance. It goes beyond more.
You're right, it is ignorance. But you guys are the ones that are ignorant. Willfully ignorant.
Than the way that people were just like acting out and attacking people. Some people were avoiding other people. Some people were like, oh no, you can't go over to that house because they're Asian, they're Japanese.
That was the law in some places. You couldn't go to people's houses, not because they were Asian. You couldn't go to your family members' houses.
They're Chinese. So that also is a version of hate. So like before we go too far into like the specifics of like crime, there was even just, social injustices. And that is one of the things that I think that people might overlook.
Yuling?
In regards to just the term stop Asian hate, the reason why I feel like it falls short is not because of the sentiment. I think that there is definitely prejudice and absolutely like hate against Asians in this country. But I think sometimes that we view that violence very like specific, like I'm gonna beat you up because you're Asian, and like that is the violence. And I think sometimes like on a larger scale, that violence also shows up in ways in which like housing, education, healthcare, a lot of that.
And so now let's move on to the main event, because a lot of what's behind the disagreements that we're having today seems to be related to politics. How many of you here would say that you're progressive or liberal? Raise of hands. And how many would say conservative or not progressive and liberal? Undecided? Okay. Are Asians invisible in American politics? Are they visible? Do Asian Americans have political power? Let's take visibility.
Not visible enough. But that is a consequence of...
Go out to California. Asians run the West Coast. Yeah, Gavin Newsom's the governor, but look at the state legislatures. It's predominantly Asians.
The mentality towards politics for a lot of Asians. You don't participate in the system, nobody's gonna care what you have to say, period. Which is why I've made it a point to participate in the system. I don't go around saying, well, I'm Asian, that's why I deserve to be here. But just me being in the room is a step above what's kind of the sort of awareness, the political awareness of specifically the Indian community, in my opinion. That's been my experience. So I don't think that they're visible enough. And the reason they're not visible is because they don't participate and do the work behind it.
So that engagement, civic engagement.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with you on that in terms of, I think it's more than that, but I do agree as lack of engagement or, claiming to be apolitical. I think when Kamala became vice president, there wasn't really that much support that I saw from the Asian community. And
because she's awful, because she's a phony. She said she's like 3 different things. She's just a completely awful person. So the Asians are just gonna have to fall in. Oh well, there's an Asian. Better start clapping. Oh, support her. Like this is how they think. This is how they think.
And she's our first Asian American woman to be elected in such a high position of office. So where is the support? Just because she may not look a specific way.
So what you're saying is that the broader Asian American community, which might include East Asians and otherwise, didn't speak up enough for having a South Asian person like Kamala Harris of mixed race become...
And that's my point. And that's to my point. that it's not white people that are not supporting you. It's other Asians you have a problem with. But you want to turn around and blame it on white supremacy and white people and accuse white people of doing all this shit they're not doing.
Vice President of the United States. So
Yeah.
divisions within itself.
Yes. Like, I did not see very many East Asians come out and be like, Asian American representation. But I saw plenty of Black people come out and be like, Black representation. So there is definitely a lot of divisiveness within our own communities that we need to understand and recognize. Being Asian is not just being East Asian.
Maybe Asians didn't feel represented by Kamala Harris. Maybe people just don't like Kamala Harris. Like, she's one of the least popular vice presidents, I believe, in like recent history. I don't know if it's like an Asian exclusive thing. I just think a lot of people
Why don't you think they like her?
She comes off as obnoxious and pretentious, and they don't like her politics.
Can I piggyback off that? I think Kamala Harris does not get the love from the Asian community because she picks and chooses when she wants to be whatever her identity is. When she's on TV, on camera, I'm a Black woman, blah, 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 blah. But she only claims her Indian and Asian background when she's in the fundraisers with the rich Indians. She's doing it to herself. She's dividing her identity by playing up, code switching. I know AOC likes to use the word code switching to the Black community when she's on camera, and then code switching to the Asian community when she's raising money. Don't be surprised if, you only come around when you're asking for a check, and then we're not in the streets, as hard as you would like us to be. But then again, you don't go on camera wearing a dot on your head and the jasmine in your hair. Right? And wearing a sari. Show me a picture of Kamala in a sari. Right? When was the last time? I've seen Justin Trudeau wearing Indian clothes before her. You know what I mean? So don't give me the nonsense, right? Like, it's her fault that Asians don't get behind her.
For her trying to win over people, do you think that maybe as a choice to not represent that, to be more relatable to the masses, could be the reason why she acts the way that she acts? I don't know.
Are you saying Asians are not relatable to the American public?
Yes, to some, yeah. No, to some. Being in a position where you have this generalization of how a standard American is supposed to be, and then all of a sudden, depending on the social climate, there is a lot of pressure on people to be a specific person. And so when you're someone in that light, trying to get support from different people, not even saying that she's right or wrong, I'm just saying that could possibly be a motive.
She did it to herself. If you just called yourself American, you wouldn't be in this mess.
I think,
but you switch the identity based on the need. And that is the problem.
I think Kamala exists.
It's politically
and
expedient.
You kind of saw this when Biden chose her. She exists to basically appeal to like the woke diversity mob. Like, that's the truth. Biden said, I'm going to pick a woman, and then he said, I'm going to pick a woman of color, quote unquote, ended up with Kamala Harris. And I just think that a lot of people outside of Ivy League educations find that stuff off-putting. In general America, a lot of people of all different colors are very off-put by her entire political presentation in existence because they're off-put by the
women,
diversity,
Black people,
liberal nonsense.
They're off-put by a woman in leadership. I want to chime in here.
Apparently, even like women of color and Black women, even like
as we talked about,
approval rating in general sucks.
I agree.
Why? Because
let's get off the approval rating for a second.
Right, because they just want to sum up. She's not liked because she's Asian. No, she's not liked because she's awful. Because she's absolutely awful.
Hold on one point of yours, which is she's a token. That's what I heard from you.
Sure. I think Biden chose her absolutely as a token.
So I want to know how you respond to sort of what Vince was saying, that Kamala Harris effectively was a token. A token.
See, and they're acting like that's crazy, but yet they see the three conservatives as tokens. They can't have tokens. Only our side can have tokens. And what this is, if Kamala Harris's unfavorability can be boiled down to what she looks like, so can theirs. And that's what this is all about. It's not about the people, the awful people that they actually are, because they're awful people. It's just about their race. That way they don't actually have to look in the mirror and face who they really are.
Pick because demographic boxes, and specifically an Asian American demographic box.
I feel like anytime a person of color gets chosen, we're looked at as a token, especially in institutions It's historical, like it's new to us, right? So in one sense, I think there's some truth to it. Even in our own communities, I think, is she a token? Like we second guess ourselves. You start to second guess, are you worth it? Because you're constantly being
Am I
questioned.
qualified?
Did you get here because you were diversity hire or, this is the existence that we live in right now. And so Kamala Harris is actually very representative of what we face. You can say token all day long, but you can't take that away.
People will scrutinize her. However, what about the other people, other 47 presidents who've definitely done their fair share? I'd say probably worse things.
Yes,
who,
absolutely.
Who are not nitpicked for what they are wearing or, like maybe not fitting in enough because they already fit in.
Or for being white. Yet another white person.
Because Trump wasn't attacked. He wasn't attacked for what he looks like, what is the length of his tie, that he couldn't walk down a ramp, how he drank water. None of that happened. None of that happened. No, that's okay because he's Trump and he's a conservative. So that's cool.
Yeah, like a lot of people don't agree with, her politics. And like, I don't want to take like her credentials away.
Yeah.
Because she earned it. She wasn't just a diversity pick. She was picked because she also
put in the work.
She also put in the work.
I'd like to hear from...
What work? What work did she put in? She's awful. Everywhere she's been awful.
From the women in the panel about the specifics that we're talking about. Because not only is she the first Black and Asian American vice president, she's also the first woman. Choice.
I disagree with Kamala's politics, I'll say it, but at the same time, she's representative of a woman, and I think we should give her some award for that. Like,
credit?
I like credit, yes, that's the word that I was looking for. This is my point exactly with plain identity politics. Like, who cares if she's Black? Who cares if she's a woman? Like, if she got there on her own merit, that's what's important.
Elaine?
Which she didn't.
I haven't really thought too much about her being a token so much. I think I'm more interested in, well, what will you do now that you're in office? Will things still change? Or is it
what would that
optics?
look like?
Yeah, and it's great because obviously you do want the optics. You hope you do.
I mean, Tulsi Gabbard nailed her during the presidential debates, of what she was about out in California. She was holding people prisoner after their time so she could use them to fight forest fires. She was incarcerating parents of truant children. That's Asian culture? Because if she was a white woman doing that, you sure as shit would be like, that's white supremacy.
Do hope and you put a lot of that pressure on that person who you feel might represent you. If I wanted to talk really about representation, I'd be like, put somebody poor up there. I don't want anybody rich running the government. Sorry, like, you know what I mean? It's just kind of like, what's the pulse on your country, on your actual citizens? So that's what I'm interested in.
Let's talk about higher education and affirmative action. So I think a lot of our conversation, the rubber hits the road on this topic. And because plaintiffs challenging affirmative action rules, there are Asian Americans who are banding together to do that.
I think affirmative action is a scam. It's an excuse to make race-based hiring decisions. And I think that that's wrong. And I think that everything should be based on merit.
The students that are picked by affirmative action are top-tier students.
Yeah.
They're not like some D+ students that are getting picked just based on race. They already are performing at a very top level themselves and proven themselves to be picked.
Despite systemic barriers.
I think to a reasonable extent, you could say, okay, if someone grew up in like total poverty and they didn't have the same opportunities, then you can lower the standard a little bit. What I would still say is I think there has to be some proof still of capability. Right now, there's a left-wing movement to remove SAT and standardized testing. So in my opinion, sure, the SAT may not be a perfect test. I think it's decent. That is what actually levels the playing field, is saying we have to take the same test. It doesn't matter what your teacher, how hard they grade, you pay them off, private school education, that's the environment where it's like totally even.
Sure, it's one way to measure intelligence, but that's all.
So are IQ tests. Before the whole push for college and college prep and college degrees, you could get a job, but you used to have to take an IQ test. And that's what weeded out, these mid-range and these low-range people from getting into these important jobs. They would get into a trades job that was more suited to their capabilities. Now they threw that out. You can't do that. Supreme Court said that years ago. You can't use IQ testing. So that's when they went to getting college degrees and getting that useless piece of paper. And it's failed miserably.
Also assuming that intelligence can only be assessed in one way. How do you compare someone who is just as smart, or, you know, maybe even if they didn't get the SAT score, as like their classmate who literally paid a tutor for 4 years.
Every single day, yep.
You know, versus this person, they took the test twice in their life and then they put a bunch.
Who's doing that? Who's having a tutor for 4 years to take an SAT test? Yeah, I guess if you did that, but who actually do you know who's ever done that?
Of their savings into paying for the test.
Yeah.
How are you supposed to compare these people and say that one is more deserving?
So I think to level the playing field, like we need to improve our local schools. Not every school is the same. Like if you're in a poor community, you don't have the best teachers. So we want to hold all the teachers accountable for giving top grade education so everybody's leveled. And then it wouldn't matter which race or socioeconomic position that you're taking. I don't agree with like getting rid of affirmative action altogether. I think it needs reform.
What about like legacy kids? I think that it's great to take into account, you know, the systems in power that have intentionally made sure that certain people, and specifically Black and brown people, cannot have access to education. I think that's a great way to try to level that playing field at the least. If a kid
we don't
can
see
get
a fuss being made about legacy kids ever. When do you ever hear about that?
Exactly, it's that like people get a lot.
Oh, you hear about it when people get rejected from school? That these legacies get in and they're complete freaking dummies. Happens all the time.
Lot more up in arms, I would say, when it's like, oh, well, so you just got in because of your, you know, race.
What do you think the future of Asian Americans in America and American politics is?
The paradigm we are going through now, especially with our relations with different ethnic groups and everything, I think that we are headed towards balkanization, and the future of America is starting to look like Bosnia. And so
it's the only thing that's going to save us is balkanization, because it doesn't work. If you're not going to assimilate, and you balkanize not by race, by ideology. You balkanize by how do we think alike? Do we have the same goals in life? You don't have to balkanize by race. You balkanize by ideology.
I want to avoid that.
You know, within our generation, at least what I've seen, a lot more Asian Americans who are interested in politics, who are interested.
Because you're not going to have a successful society if you're constantly having to cater to these children. You don't have the time. Who has the time? It's just you're wasting time.
In bringing more representation and bringing more, saying like, we've had enough. You know, this is not how we need to be treated, how we deserve to be treated. So like, I think in terms of involvement, there will be a higher involvement of Asian Americans. And also just the mere fact that we had Asian American representation, whether it's Kamala or Andrew Yang just even running, that shows people that, hey, like maybe that could be me.
Yeah.
I'm allowed. I think that one of the biggest things that representation does is it says, I'm allowed to do that because I see someone that looks like me do that.
Yeah.
And I think just exactly what you said is that, you know, with Black Lives Matter, Asian hate, we learned that if we work together as people of color,
yes.
and that's where I think, that's what it means to me, is that we as a group working together get more done.
Yes.
And that if we support each other and we do this, we can get more of ourselves up there.
I think you will definitely see some people actually move to the right because of that. How big will it be? I don't really know. Probably not as big as a lot of Republicans hope, but I think it will happen.
What do I think about the future? I'm gonna be hopeful because I think that oftentimes, like, we are characterized as just angry, right? And that our politic isn't, and that our politic isn't rooted.
That makes me angry.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are angry. You are angry. Sorry if you're categorized as you're acting.
and our politic isn't rooted in love and isn't rooted in community,
Yes.
isn't rooted in hope, and I hope that it is, right? And so what I'm hopeful about is that we can sit here and name politicians who look like us and sound like us.
Yes.
And that wasn't the case when I was a kid. I didn't think that was possible. So from where I'm sitting, like I think the future of Asian American leadership looks like telling our own stories in community with other people who haven't had their stories told yet.
Just from seeing sort of the agitation within our own communities, I think just like with movements and like being tired of staying silent. I think that's part of going back to also that model minority myth of like, I'm gonna mind my business, I'm just gonna do my thing, and you guys just fight it out over there. You know, I think that like seeing the passion kind of jump out is very beautiful to witness. And so hopefully I think that the future, at least that I envision, is one where we can maybe see more humanity in each other. I think that as an Asian American, a lot of how I've viewed myself has been through a lens of self-hatred and shame. With the moment that
self-hatred and shame has nothing to do with white people. That's you. It's you. White person can't help it if you're jealous that you're not white, because you know you're the minority in the country. Like, I'm sorry, but I don't know anybody who's ever been, just because I'm sure there's people out there who just hate Asians, okay, for whatever stupid reason, but it's not a majority. It's not even that many of them. People are accepting of other cultures as long as the other cultures, you know, are assimilating to American values that aren't spouting this type of bullshit at you.
That we're in right now, even this conversation that we've been able to have, I think that the difference that I hopefully feel is that we're not going to sit on the sidelines and be like, that's not my business. I think now we're ready to be like, that is my business, and I'm going to be vocal about it. So I don't know what that looks like in the future, but I think that my hope is that it looks more like community care.
You know, white children in this country grew up with the mentality, I can be president one day. We didn't have that. and we're just now like, oh, could it be us? What I hear a lot in your reasons for being Republican or...
But that's not on white people. Like, what's that on white? Like, what do you want? You moved to a predominantly white country. Like, what? Holy God, the entitlement. As she sits there with purple hair, ripped jeans, like a typical American girl.
Thinking the way you do is that you don't want to be seen as a victim. I see that, I hear that very loud and clear. And it's rooted in kind of that logic that pits you against yourself. That you constantly walk around with this idea, I'm not a victim. But it doesn't just end with you. We are people that come from community. One of the things, even though we are not a monolith, a lot of our cultures can unite in the fact that we believe in community. And I know when people, you know, when we talk as passionately as we do, it sounds like we're complaining to some people, but we have seen progress and we know it's possible. So yes, we are hopeful that our children can even have it better than us.
To your point, you said, you know, you feel like in some situations I'm pitted against myself. You're 100% right. I am my number one competition. And I'm going to win because I am the representation.
I don't doubt that you're gonna win.
The conversation about representation, I gotta see somebody who looks like me in order for me to believe. No, I am that guy. I am gonna put,
Not
I'm
everybody
going,
has
I'm
your
gonna put
belief.
myself
I
there,
love
right?
that.
No, not everybody has his motivation. You don't. You want everything handed to you. That's all it is. That's all it is. He's driven. He's not taking any excuses. And these people, the other ones, are just looking for excuses.
Like that like I'm gonna be that representation. I'm that representation every day.
Guess what, guys? We were all that representation today. So thank you.
I don't know about all that.
For the passionate responses. You're gonna get a bunch of us in the room together. We're not gonna agree. That's just how it is.
Yes.
So appreciate it, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. And that's the end of that. It's where feminism leads. This is where societal narcissism has brought us. It's just, it's self-defeating. It's the self-defeat of societal narcissism. That's what you're seeing here. So they're people looking to lay blame where it doesn't belong because they don't have the motivation, the drive, they're jealous, or they have jealousy and self-hate. It's a sad, sad, sad day. And when these people are talking to you like this about white people, look at how they're dressed. Look at how they act. Look, does this appear to be a woman who hates white people? White culture? American culture? Does it? Because if they went spouting this stuff back in Korea or Bangladesh or Taiwan or wherever these people are, like Philippines, wherever they're from, they'd be told, you're an American, shut up. So, thank you so much, David, for the contribution. I really appreciate it. Thank you to everybody watching. Please leave any opinions in the comment section below. And again, if you want your story read on the channel, you have a topic you'd like me to cover, something you'd like me to expose, you'd like to set up a Skype phone call, have a private video made, you'd like to sponsor a video like this for someone who needs help and can't afford it, or just make a contribution to the channel in general to keep it supported, growing, and successful, because this channel survives 100% on contributions from all of you. Without you guys, all this goes away. So if you like what you see here and you want to see more videos like this, you know what to do with either the Zelle, Cash App, PayPal, and email links in the description box below. Also, please like and share this video wherever you can. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't, and be sure to click the subscription bell to be notified of all my video uploads. I'm Ollie Matthews. This has been Societal Narcissism.